Germans called it their secret tank, a machine designed to change the course of the war, faster than the Tiger, deadlier than anything the Allies had ever faced. But what if the greatest enemy it faced wasn't enemy fire at all? In the summer of 1943, on the wide, open plains near Kursk, the German army prepared to unleash a weapon it believed would restore its fading dominance on the Eastern Front. This was the Panzerkampfwagen V Panther, a tank rushed into service under conditions of extreme secrecy. Among the units chosen to debut this weapon was Panzer Regiment 39, attached to Panzer Grenadier Division Grossdeutschland, one of the most elite formations in the Wehrmacht. Within this regiment, 13 brand-new Panther tanks were ordered forward to take part in the opening blow of Operation Citadel. They never reached the battlefield. Little did they know, Mother Nature and mechanical reality was about to expose the fatal flaw behind Germany's most ambitious armored gamble. By early 1943, Germany was losing momentum. The catastrophe at Stalingrad had shattered the myth of invincibility. Entire armies had been lost. Manpower was bleeding away, and the Red Army was growing stronger by the day. Adolf Hitler demanded a decisive counterstroke, one that would destroy Soviet armored reserves in a single massive encirclement. The result was Operation Citadel, aimed at the Kursk salient. To succeed, Germany needed a technological edge. The answer, Hitler believed, was the Panther. Inspired by encounters with the Soviet T-34, the Panther featured sloped armor, a powerful 7.5-centimeter KWK-42L/70 gun, and superior optics. On paper, it was nearly unstoppable, but there was a problem. The Panther was not ready. Design changes were still being made even as production began. Engines overheated, final drives failed. Fuel lines leaked. Crews had barely trained on the new vehicle. Yet, under Hitler's direct orders, the tank was rushed into combat. Panzer Regiment 39 received its Panthers in late June 1943. The crews, many veterans of earlier campaigns, were proud but uneasy. They were handed machines no one fully understood, and all of this unfolded under the brutal conditions of a Russian summer. By July 2, 1943, temperatures across the Kursk region climbed above 30 degrees Celsius. Dust hung thick in the air. Engines strained under the heat. At 0400 hours, Panther units began moving toward their staging areas. For one company, 13 Panthers in total, the march itself became a nightmare. Within the first 20 kilometers, warning lights began to flash. Engines overheated, transmission housings cracked, fuel pumps failed. By 0900 hours, one Panther was already immobilized, then another. Then 3 more. Crews worked frantically, stripped to sweat-soaked undershirts, trying to cool engines with whatever water they could find. Mechanics crawled beneath 45-ton vehicles as dust coated their lungs. By 1400 hours, only 4 of the original 13 Panthers were still moving. Then came the terrain. Recent rain had softened the ground beneath the sun-baked crust. Panther tracks, poorly designed for these conditions, bit into the soil and sank. One tank slid sideways into a shallow ravine. Another threw a track while turning. A third stalled and could not restart. By nightfall, all 13 Panthers were out of action. Not a single Soviet shot had been fired. As July 5, 1943 dawned, the opening day of Operation Citadel, the battlefield erupted in fire. Artillery thundered, Stukas screamed overhead. Thousands of German and Soviet tanks surged forward. But behind the lines, the crews of the 13 Panthers faced humiliation and despair. Orders crackled over the radio. Advance immediately. They couldn't. Engines were dead. Final drives were shattered. Recovery vehicles were overwhelmed. Some Panthers had to be abandoned entirely. One commander, an Oberleutnant with years of Eastern Front experience, reportedly said, "We feared the Russians less than our own machines." Fear gripped the men, not of death, but of helplessness. These were Germany's most advanced tanks, and they were sitting useless in the dirt. What happened next would become legendary, not for victory, but for warning. As the battle raged without them, German commanders finally faced reality. Reports poured in from across the front. Panthers breaking down en masse, entire companies reduced to wrecks without enemy contact. By 10 July, more Panthers had been lost to mechanical failure than to Soviet guns. The secret tank was no secret anymore. Field workshops worked around the clock. Crews cannibalized parts from disabled vehicles. Engineers documented every failure. Slowly, painfully, the Panther began to improve. But at Kursk, it was too late. The offensive stalled. Soviet counterattacks grew stronger. Germany's last great strategic gamble in the East failed. Operation Citadel was called off on 13 July 1943. German losses were staggering. Over 50,000 casualties and hundreds of tanks destroyed or disabled. Of the 13 Panthers committed, nearly half were lost or immobilized within days. The 13 Panthers, stopped by heat, dust, and mud before battle, became a symbol not of weakness, but of overconfidence. The Panther would go on to become one of the most feared tanks of the war, but only after countless redesigns and hard lessons learned in blood and steel. No medals were awarded for that day, only silence and abandoned machines rusting in the Russian soil. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WW2 Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.